It's a thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I matched the book cover.
Was this on purpose at all?
This is the fog. Does it look like fog?
It does. Yes.
It was totally not intentional. I'm not like that.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Miles. I'm a bookseller here at Chevalier'S, and I'm now proudly Paul, Tim's partner, his new tennis partner. So, there you go. So this, although I recognize very few of you, this feels like a home crowd, and it feels like a family event. So here's what we're going to do. Tim's going to talk to James. Tim's maybe going to read a bit. Then massive book sales and signing to follow. Tim has a hot date at 8 p.m., and that is our firm cutoff. So if there's like a fawning line, you will be very politely but forcibly removed. That's the warning. So just by way of an introduction, you all know who Tim is. Tim and Paul would come into Chevalier'S mostly on Sunday afternoons with someone named Gertie. Gertie is a dog. Shout out Gertie, who's not here due to like professionally diagnosed anxiety. And over the course of these visits, we'd be here on Sundays and we'd chat, and they're just the sweetest guys in the world. And one day Tim was like, hey, just so you know, I wrote a book. And we want to do the launch here. And we were like, yes, we're going to ignore your email for a month, though. And that's what we did, but now we're here. And it's the best night ever. So, Tim, thank you.
I was very nervous about it.
Look, it's an elite situation here.
And they really make you work for it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I didn't hear anything, I was like, on to the next, I guess. And here we are.
See, it works. It works,
Yeah.
people. So thank you so much. Tim is going to be here with James Roday Rodriguez, who I think all of you will recognize from the hit television show Psych. Woo! Psych. He's got so many projects. He's doing directing stuff now, but most importantly, he is here to talk about this beautiful book, Alice the Cat by Tim Cummings. James, come on down and let's take it away.
I'd like to just place some grace in the space, if that's okay with everybody. Just some thank yous. Thanks to Chevalier'S. Thanks, Miles, for facilitating this so magnificently. I'm really happy this is happening here. I really wanted it to happen this way. It feels really surreal, like when you meditate and they say, envision things you want to happen. So it feels sort of like it's not really happening, but it's here. But it's real and we're here. Okay. Thanks to all my friends who are here. You are all my heart. I mean, you're my heart, and it's bursting that you're all here. My best friend in the world flew here from the East Coast to be with me, Dorothy, right over there. And I could not be more proud to have this fellow human here launching this book into the world with me. We've known each other for a really long time. We went to NYU together. He's always been such a massive supporter. Force of creativity over here. You know, I hope tonight doesn't tank because, I mean, I'll forgive him because he got us tickets to The Cure at the Hollywood Bowl literally right after this, which is why we have to leave. So I love you all, but it's fucking Robert Smith on my launch day. Thank you, Paul and Gertie, my family. I love you both so much. You've really, where are you? Hi, babe. You've really been on the roller coaster of this with me for a long time. And here it is. It's a roller coaster. There are plenty of you out there who know what I'm talking about. My team, Regal House Publishing, Fitzroy Books, Inkwell Management. The book will be an audiobook. I just heard it, so that's coming out soon too. Yeah. Oscar Rodriguez, are you here? Oscar? He's not here. Well, he's the guy that did all this amazing artwork. He created this art for the book, and it's on the website, so check that out when you have a second. And then lastly, read the book, talk to me about it. Let's have a conversation about it. That's the point. And hi, Carrie. Carrie Stickway. God, how exciting. Hi. Hi. Hi, Erin. Hi. Yeah, read the book and reach out to me about it. And, do a good deed and go on Goodreads and review it, because that shit's really important, as stupid as it is. But it really helps to generate interest, and a lot of people in the industry look at that stuff, so it's important to share your feelings in the public realm, which that's saying something very big in today's day and age, the public realm with social media and everything. So, should I read first and then we talk?
I think you should.
I'm not gonna torture you all and read forever. I've been to enough of these things to know that you don't want to read too long. And I'm not gonna contextualize the entire thing. I'm not gonna tell you this is the entire. Hi, Louise. Hi. I'm not gonna give the entire plot synopsis. When you read it, you'll get what's going on. But suffice it to say, Tess and her newfound companion, his name's Eddie Poffy, they managed to get Alice earlier in the day, Alice is the cat, to a vet hospital. But something happened there, and they had to split unexpectedly and suddenly. So the plan is, we go back at night, we rescue her. If we have to bust in, we bust in. They don't have to bust in, it's an animal hospital, so it's open 24 hours, but they need distractions. So they bring this kid in, his name's Cotter Wingham. He's bonkers in love with Tess. He's a real weird, wild, wacky little kid. He's an improv genius. He does impersonations, he's a theater kid. And he decides that he's gonna bring a recently deceased squirrel he found in his backyard as his decoy. This chapter is called Animal God. At the vet's office, we crouched behind a hedge and peered across the lot into the double glass doors. A large front desk stood front and center, and a college-aged Asian girl in light blue scrubs tended to her work. The reception desk looked like a big horseshoe, and at the back, file folders filled a wall of shelves, stuffed to the gills. They had blue, green, yellow, red, and orange tags on their edges. So many folders. When I looked at those files, I thought of all the times I'd passed by the nurse's station at the hospital when my mom was sick, and my stomach dropped out of my body. The sad smiles from the nurses and doctors who knew what you didn't want to face, that she wouldn't make it. But don't worry, because look, here's this big bowl of yummy candy on our counter for you to feel better. We give this to all the kids who have parents who are about to die. Oh look, today we have Nutter Butters. Here you go, Tess. I took a deep breath, and I looked at Cotter. The girl in the scrubs worked alone. We watched her a while. So, Cotter. Wait! Call me C. Wingy, and I'll call you T-San and E-Pop. What? Rapper names? No. Come on! I clapped my hands hard in front of his face. Focus, doofus. Okay, simmer down, future wife. I rolled my eyes. Go around the far side of the desk and distract her. Give us a signal if it's clear, and then we slip in and we bolt down the hall. Cotter, keep her back to the doors. I mean it. And give you a signal. Duh to the ninth. We're gonna get her, Tess, Eddie assured me. She's gonna be okay, I promise. I swallowed. Pancakes in the morning? You betcha. I instantly felt better. What? Cotter said. Pancakes are my fave. You can come and have some too, if you don't screw this up, I said. We crouched and skittered across the lot toward the doors. We made it to the entrance and hunched down, able to peer inside. Beside us, 2 tall potted plants stood like guards, Chevalier'S. My mother had loved them. We had them outside our house too. I reached forward and gently rubbed one of the waxy dark green leaves between my thumb and forefinger, and then I plucked a chunky little rock from the soil. I took a deep breath. Cotter rubbed his hands together very hard and very fast. Eddie and I stared. Cotter said, "I gotta keep Gregory warm so it looks like she's still alive," and then picked her up and held her there in the heat of his hands a moment. Placing her gently back in the box, he looked at us. "Karate Kid, duh. You really need to watch more 80s movies, freaks." "I saw that one," Eddie whispered. "I liked that one." They high-fived silently. I shook my head. Cotter stood up, held the box in one hand, and approached the entrance doors. They were not locked. Phew. He slipped right in. Before the door clicked shut behind him, I slid the little rock into the door jamb to keep it ajar. That way we could hear him. "Please help me! Please help my Gregory!" Cotter yelled, all panicked, and with a thick southern twang. Cotter even altered his walk as he crossed the lobby to the far side of the horseshoe. He lifted out of his back heels, bobbing like Tom Sawyer or something. The weirdest thing I ever saw, but it went perfectly with the accent. He plopped the box down on the counter and the girl stood and investigated it. Then she looked at Cotter. "Hello, ma'am, I am Billy Bo Nathaniel Thibodeau, and..." I'm sorry, he's so nuts. "Hello, ma'am, I am Billy Bo Nathaniel Thibodeau, and this here be my pet squirrel, Gregory Bill Eilish Thibodeau, and what is your name, ma'am?" Sonny. This is your pet? Gregory Bill Eilish, been in my family for 4 generations now." "Okay," said Sonny, and tugged at the back of her ponytail. She turned and looked at the front doors for a second. Eddie and I froze. Then she turned back and regarded the box. Cotter checked the hallway and then looked at us and shook his head. "Not clear." Sonny asked, "Is she registered here? Is she licensed and microchipped?" "I do not know, ma'am. I do not know the answer to these questions. I do not even know what microchip even means. All I know now is Gregory Bill is my one true companion, like the younger sister I never knew I never needed, and she can't be dying today, ma'am, so let's get her in there. Now, please, now, go on." Well, wait a minute. Do you have a parent with you? How did you get here?" "Ma'am, I run like the chickens." "The chickens? Show off the chickens." "Okay, well, that means..." "Sonny, let's get her some CPR, please. Get the fibrillators on her." "I need to make a call here. Can you just give me 1 minute?" "No, I already told you. We won't be waiting for a minute or anything else." And then Cotter lifted Gregory up out of the box with his bare hands and ran across the lobby toward the hallway. Sonny came from behind the desk, yelling, "Excuse me, where are you going? Come back here right now!" Her voice faded as she chased him down the hall. Eddie and I slipped through the doors and ran down the other hallway. The first rooms were small exam rooms, no animals in those. We ran down another hallway and found offices and supply closets. How were we going to find Alice? I felt afraid, like we did not belong there, because an animal hospital was a sacred institution and we were forbidden to disturb it. What if there was an animal god who was going to strike us all dead for invading this sacred space? I felt the same way about visiting my mom, like I wasn't welcome there either, like death had claimed her for its own, and we of the living had no right to intervene in its house. We tiptoed to the end of that hallway and edged against the wall beside big, colorful posters with information about cat and dog vaccinations. We carefully peered around the corner, all clear. In the middle of the next hallway, we saw a big set of doors with the sign, "Authorized personnel only." We scuttled down the hall, about to push open the double doors, when suddenly we heard Cotter, way across the other side of the animal hospital, yelling out and crying, "What do you mean my Gregory's dead? No!" I glanced at Eddie. He is the best freak ever. "Come on, we should go." He pointed to the doors and we went through them and into what looked like a big operating room. The smells. Rubbing alcohol, cat pee, vanilla candle, pine sol cleaner. Reminded me of how our house smelled when my mom was dying. I wondered if I would always think about death whenever I smelled rubbing alcohol and pine needles. On the far side of the room was a set of doors. I ran over and looked through the windows. On the left were little metal cages built in perfect squares, 3 rows on top of each other. Opposite them were individual rooms, each the size of an elevator with glass doors. The light there was dim. The animals slept soundly. I thought they might have been drugged up after their surgeries. I wondered what would happen if they all woke up and saw us. And then they did. Eddie turned on his phone light and held it over his head so we could see. An old German shepherd started barking loudly, which made a little brown chihuahua yap and spin in its cage, rattling it. I started freaking out. We would be busted. I hoped that Cotter, wherever he was, kept them distracted with Gregory the dead squirrel. I looked around. A black poodle was curled into a ball at the back of the first cage. Its food and water bowl knocked over. A super fat tabby cat sat in the next cage down. Its eyes glowed a bright yellow-green in the light of Eddie's phone. Cage after cage. An irritated pacing schnauzer, a trembling little dachshund with leaky eyes, a hissy black cat that hated the world, a gray-white rabbit that twitched its little pink nose, a brown pit bull, a black pit bull, a red pit bull. All of them barking, growling, glaring, hissing, but no Alice. No Alice. The sound deafened me as it reverberated through the room. I clapped my hands over my ears and crouched down. "Do you see her, Eddie?" I yelled. He was darting from cage to cage. He looked over at me and he shook his head. Where could she be? Where else would she be?
And you ain't heard nothing yet.
One little reading, and then we'll get going. This is a sort of this is like a gentle bridge between the crisis of the book and the forthcoming climax. And Tess has to leave this house she's been hiding out in that has a ghostly entity named Francine, and these two goth teens named Lunar Velvet and Dami Tross. And she has to fix the mess that took place at the animal hospital, which I just read. You just heard a little bit of it. Okay, this chapter's called Ridiculous. I woke up to the sound of church bells. I thought about Francine's wind chimes. Wait, the church bells? They ring out at noon. Had I slept that long? I tossed the covers off and stood, feeling dizzy and weak, but much better than the night before. I walked downstairs to the kitchen. The house was empty. I found a piece of yellow paper on the table. Meow, Tess. Sorry to leave you alone, but you were sleeping so deeply, just like a dead girl. If you wake and see this, fret not. We will be back soon to get you. Just keep resting, please. XLV and DTX. I drifted to the playroom and floated inside. The Ouija board rested in the center of the pool table. I reached forward and gently touched the edge of the planchette. I didn't want it to move or anything. I didn't want to speak to Francine. I just wanted to touch the small magical object that somehow bridged our separate worlds. Where you are is far away from where I am, Francine had said. If my mom was really next to me, I wanted to see her, touch her, talk to her. I didn't want invisible stuff floating around me. If she was with God somewhere, up high above the stars in some shiny white palace filled with angels and trillions of souls, what was she doing there? Just like hanging out with every other person who had ever died in the history of the world? Wouldn't the place be crowded? Did they play bananagrams? Cards Against Humanity? Did they sing karaoke? Did they watch Avatar: The Last Airbender and Spirited Away on giant white screens held up by angels' wings? Did they fall in love with one another? Did they get married and have glowing little winged souls for babies? Are we really that important that we get to go to heaven? Even butt nuggets like Becky Poffy? And if you had religion in your life, you'd have the answer to all these questions? Oh, crap to the umpteenth. That is confusing. Mom, I suddenly said out loud, surprising myself. If you're really next to me, don't look if I'm doing bad stuff or listen to my brains if I'm thinking bad thoughts. You're only allowed to pay attention when things are good and I'm like winning at life, okay? Silence. Because I don't want you to see us like this. So look away, or float away, or hibernate like Francine did until things get better. Nothing. And if you're not there, floating around me like an invisible cloud or something, then never mind all this. I have to go. I have to go. My friends are in trouble because of me, and I'm gonna fix it. Francine, If you can hear me, I'll be back to visit, okay? It sounded so ridiculous. But how ridiculous was it really, given everything that had happened in the past 2 days? And how ridiculous was it that the people we love more than anything in the world get boob cancer, so painful that they have to shoot them full of tons of drugs that make them not even know who you are? And then they die forever, like they were never even here in the first place. Ridiculous? I never liked that stupid word anyway. Sounds like the name of a cough medicine. I gathered everything I brought with me and I put it into my Hermione backpack and I zipped it up and I left the house. Eddie and Cotter needed me. Ridiculous? Forever and ever.
All right. Thank you for those little teases of your brilliance.
It's so hard to know what to read, it's like.
I think you made fine choices. I should start by saying that I was lucky enough to get a copy of this book ahead of time. I was privileged enough to read it. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, told gorgeously as only this gentleman could tell it, and it really is an honor for me to be here sharing this moment with you, Tim. It truly, truly is. You did a wonderful, wonderful job on this book. So, now that you all know how good it is and know that you're going to go out and get it, let's sort of speak in a vacuum about something that you haven't read yet. I know many of you here know Tim and go way back with Tim, as I do. But for those of you who don't maybe know as much about him, there's so much more going on than just an incredibly handsome, flaxen-haired, soft-lipped wordsmith. It's the majority of my experience with Tim has been watching him as a brilliant performer. We went to school together studying acting, and I have seen him grace many a stage. He is a celebrated performer, both on stage and on screen, and in LA particularly, he's won just about every accolade that they give out in this town for theater. So I'm going to start with a softball, and that's why don't you tell us a little bit about the journey from performer to novelist, when that seed was planted, and how you found yourself going from lighting up the hardwoods to lighting up the pages. You can only use that if you want.
The really weird thing is I feel like I was only writing before I ever even acted. And I mean, I didn't start acting until I was 11 years old. But before that, all I did was,
What a loser you are.
seriously, all I did was read books and go to the library and read them, and I would write fake book reports because I was such a geek. Nobody ever saw them, but I would write fake book reports, and I would take out as many books as they would allow you to, and when I had the opportunity to act, I mean, it was a teacher at school who was like, I want you to audition for the school play. It's about the life of Ben Franklin, a young Ben Franklin, and I think you can act. And I was like, what's a play? I mean, I grew up in a town full of firemen and cops. They were like, you ain't doing no plays! But I did my first play, and weirdly, when I got into theater, it felt to me like, oh, this is just like all the people in the books, except up alive out of the pages. That's always how I felt about it. And then anytime I would do a show, like the more interesting thing for me than ever performing is like when I would play a character, I would like write a book. Character. There are people here tonight who know, like the normal heart guys, the dressing room. I mean, come on. I turned our dressing room into an encyclopedia. So I've always been really, really just steeped in the whole process of the character and the story more than anything. At a certain point in my life, in my early 40s, I was like, I need to take a break from this. I don't really understand who I am anymore now that my beard is turning gray. And I went to Antioch to get my master's in writing. And when I was there, I just felt really safe. Like, I felt really protected and encased in something where I could explore a lot of things that I couldn't as an actor, with all the stuff they put on you as an actor, as you know. And this came out of me. But I did not expect this in any way, shape, or form to be anything that would put me on the map. I wrote this because I had to write it. It's totally for me. It doesn't even make sense to me in a lot of ways. It's just something I had to write. I was breaking every rule you could break as I did it while I was in school. I mean, Carrie, Carrie's one of my mentors of this book. I just needed to have an experience of writing what I needed to write.
That's a perfect segue into what inspired this particular story. I mean, you could have written anything, right? You were in a safe space. So
Yeah.
why Alice's story? Why Tess's story?
Yeah, I did lose my mom to cancer when I was a teenager, and she had this cat named Simba. It was a very regal white cat that we grew up together, and she was my mom's cat. I mean, they kind of worshipped one another. And after my mom passed away, the cat started to act very strangely, and one day I came home from school, and the neighbor from across the street was like, "Tim Cummings, you stupid cat's running into the street when cars go by. You need to do something about this." Mike Polachek.
Is he a fireman or a cop?
He was one of them. I think he is a cop now. And I was like, the cat's running into the street when cars go by. Awesome. So I had I had like a Rocky and Apollo Creed fight with my dad over this cat. And then she disappeared. I never knew what happened. I don't know if she succeeded. I don't know if she went into the woods and died. I don't know if my dad took her to be put down. I never knew. And I held it inside for a really long time. And then one day at Antioch, in that little courtyard, Carrie, with all the trees, and the French fries, what's the name of that place? Tremont Grill. I was like eating French fries, and all of a sudden this question popped into my head: where's the cat? I was like, oh fuck, what happened to that cat? And then, but I don't know who all these other kids are.
Well, that was my next question. Yeah, you put together the perfect ensemble of young protagonists, ranging in ages from almost 13 to 17.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a very specific time in life.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our own unique experiences with adolescence. So that was your playground, and then you created 5 kids. Who were these kids? Were these kids that you knew? Were they amalgamations of siblings? Did they come to you like lightning bolts in the night? How did you come up with these 5 kids?
I wish I had a clear answer to that. Tess just came in. She came in strong. I mean, she's pretty strong. I really wanted a force of female energy in this piece, and I just let her kind of take the reins. I can see elements of certain people in my life in her. I can see little bits of me in her, but I also can't quite put my finger on her. She's kind of like, when you try and like stop Mercury from moving around and you can't because it's
I was just doing that earlier, yeah. In the back where we were waiting to come out. Yeah.
That's kind of how Tess feels to me. Cotter is just like, he's a conglomeration of like Vern from Stand By Me and Data and Mouth and Chunk from The Goonies and was it Ralph from Lord of the Flies?
Ralph's a bit of a straight man, but yeah.
Oh no, not Ralph. Who holds who?
Piggy, maybe?
Piggy.
Yeah.
And definitely Dill from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yes, definitely got some Dill in that.
And he came in as kind of a comic, goofy, like, I really just pushed the envelope there, you know? Like, I was like, how goofy can I make this? Because that goofiness is what's battling the grief.
It was also incredibly grounded in his 13-year-old, pure, true, innocent love for Tess.
He loves her.
As much as his heart knows how to love, he is convinced that this is his person.
Yeah, he loves her so much. And he loves horror movies. He takes her to some at the end. Spoiler alert.
And what about the older kids, the goth kids? Because I have a feeling that you yourself probably had some experience with being a goth kid. So you chose a very specific path into introducing them, so that we weren't quite sure if we were going to like the goth kids or not like the goth kids. You sort of let us decide for ourselves.
I think that's the point with goth kids. And that certainly was my experience. The goth look is very, very theatrical. It's sort of like, it's a mask that you put on. It's a costume. But it's meant for you to draw in others who are like you, and then you open up. With everybody else, it's like, stay away. You don't have access, and you don't have this eyeliner. And you don't have this classic Susie and the Banshees t-shirt that was bought at the concert. Thank you very much. The goth kids are also, I think, a symbol for the way that teens can be pariahs in society and how they get treated as a result. So all of them have that. All of the kids have this thing where they're just like misfits in some way or another.
Yeah, it definitely sort of had a tiny island of misfit toy vibe, for sure. So that covers Tess and Cotter, who were, you know, on the brink of adolescence, 12 turning to 13, that awkward phase, and then, you know, your two 16-year-old goth kids represented everything you just said, which brings us to the fifth hero of the book, Eddie. Now he's 17, technically should be in high school, but has had some hardships of his own, and perhaps some arrested development, perhaps some stunted growth, but again, is a character who seems to be misunderstood by almost everybody. Why don't you talk a little bit about Eddie?
I love Eddie so much. It feels hard to talk about. He's like the heart and soul of the book in this weird kind of way. He's kind of the quintessential older brother who just kind of swoops in and takes care of everything for you when you can't do it. And the whole time he's doing it, he's completely misunderstood, and
A little bit of Boo Radley there.
there's a little bit of Boo Radley there, absolutely. Everybody's afraid of him. You know, he had a traumatic brain injury several years ago, and because of that, his behavior got very erratic. I mean, he's getting better, but there's a scene in the book where he says, I'm actually better. I just let people do what they need to do for me. I let people project onto me what they need to project onto me to make themselves feel better. Plus, he volunteers as an EMT, and he's just always helping Tess. He's like the quintessential helper. He's like that character in the book where he helps.
Yeah, the characters are constantly surprising you, which I think is one of the beautiful things about youth. I think they're constantly surprising themselves as well. I don't think this is a spoiler. We mentioned it several times in the reading as well, but Tess loses her mother, tragically, to breast cancer. Obviously, grief is a theme in your book. When you sat down and were really in the throes and knew that you were writing about grief to an extent, were you hoping that this book could provide a set of tools for young people who have been through something similar? Not a, I'll stop short of saying a manual, but like, hey, you're not alone. Read this book. Maybe it'll help you.
Yeah. Yep. Because I'm trying to think what I had when it happened, and I don't even remember. I think a year after my mom died, Ghost came out, and I was like, oh my God. It was heartbroken. right? I mean, that movie, say whatever you want about that movie, but like, it's very touching. It's like,
I don't think anybody's here to roast Ghost, right? Nobody's here to trash Ghost.
but I remember seeing that and just feeling really like, like, it's just a movie, and my heart going, no, it's real. So, I hope this is a tool for kids who may have to go through grief. It's not very common for that age group to go through grief, but it does happen. And as such, I wanted to create a very responsible ending, which we don't have to talk about, but that's what the ending is about.
Well, I think what you also accomplished, if I may, quite beautifully, is also illustrating how a child can process what grief looks like in an adult, because that's also a big part of this book. It's not just Tess trying to navigate her own feelings about her mother's death, but it's Tess watching her father not be able to deal with it at all. And by the end of the book, we, along with Tess, I think, have a much better understanding of what was actually going on there as well. So it's sort of functioning on a couple of different levels.
Yeah, I mean, he has a journey to go on too. He has to figure out how he's going to accept what has happened and take care of his daughter. And I had to keep that at bay when I was writing it, I didn't want to play that too close to my chest. I wanted to kind of keep him. I think there's a scene there's a scene early on where she kind of looks at him across the lawn and sees him in the doorway as like a shadow, and he kind of melts back, and she describes it as like watching like a fluid shadow like fading back. That's kind of like the aura of what's going on with him. And then later, I can't talk about this. Oh, no, spoil it, never mind. But yeah, he's definitely, I can say that I watched a lot of that happen around me at that time in my life. So I didn't have to dig very deep to depict it, I guess. Yeah.
How did you find striking the balance? Because there are so many mature themes going on in this book, and you don't pull a lot of punches. But at the same time, like while I was reading it, I clearly recognized why kids of the proper middle grade age are going to respond to this, relate to this, understand this. But at the same time, there's plenty in there for their parents and for adults and for someone like me. So how aware were you of striking a balance where you're not only speaking to your intended audience, or however they categorize books these days? I don't understand why everything has to exist in a category, but it does. Mm-hmm. And also, knowing that you were writing for adults, because you clearly were.
Yeah, because the genre of middle grade and YA is read widely by adults, so I think you have to kind of walk down the edge of the razor between satisfying that age group and also making it deep enough for adults who really love to read that genre. I know a lot of adults who say, I can read nothing but YA or middle grade. I can't get into, contemporary adult literary fiction. It's too much about the writing. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. I totally get that. For me, that's just how I exist. There is a huge part of me that didn't make it past that age. It just didn't. I'm still that age in so many ways. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, what are you? Right? So I'm like this football player dude, and that's not how I see myself. I see myself as like the little dude I was in junior high school, was just getting beat up, So that mentality when you're writing, I think it just flows out.
Yeah,
it's just a part of how I write.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Here's a question that you can choose to answer or dodge, but we're currently living in a very specific, tricky sort of climate, artistically, where there's There's a lot of pushback now on anyone, for lack of a better way of describing it, who dares to step out of their lane. You know, actors are only supposed to act their own experience. Writers are only supposed to write their own experience. And this, you know, personally to me feels like an overcorrection, and we all know why it happened, but it does feel somewhat stifling for those of us that chose to be artists. You chose to tell a story through the eyes and heart and experience of a 12-year-old girl. And you look more like a country western artist or ex-college football player, as you just said. A bold choice in these are times. I loved it. I thought you captured something so unique that to me also felt so foreign and alien, which is why I thought, oh, he's nailing this, because I was never a 12-year-old girl. I never felt completely disassociated in my own body. So this feels very true to me. And you're a man. Spoiler. Did you ever have to reconcile that? Did you even care? Did you think about what could be coming your way when you made the choice, you know, to make Tess a girl?
I mean, yes. I mean, I went to Antioch. It's like the social justice capital of the world. I took so much shit for this, and I still am. Like I said earlier, I wrote the book that I needed to write for me. I didn't necessarily expect it to be like, it's going out into the world and will be my debut novel, woo-hoo! No, none of that happened. It was a mentor I had in my final semester, Gail Brandeis, who she got the book in its entirety, because by that time I had written the whole thing. And I remember she called me and said, I have to get this into the world. Can I send it to some people? And I was like, like it is now? She was like, yes. So that's how that happened. But it's a good question. If I had been writing, knowing it was going out into the world, would I have not done that? Nonetheless. Here it is. I mean, you know, I think you also have to maybe look past that aspect of it to what it's actually about. And I would like to be judged, I guess, on what it's about and what it does, more than how I decided to inhabit roles. I mean, as an actor for 400 years, it's very easy for me to write first-person present tense from the POV of a character, because that's what I've been doing. That's the energy that I've been living in. So in a lot of ways, I just felt like, what would it be like if I was playing Tess? I mean, that's a stretch, but...
Well, if anyone could pull it off, it would definitely be.
But I think I just wanted to not worry about that stuff. And again, I don't know why she came in.
Well, I certainly hope that is how everyone approaches this book. Because, like I said, it's beautiful, it's refined, and we should never ever judge a book by its cover. Here's another question. I'm here to ask questions, everyone, so here's another one. As actors, we're often, I think, asked, but when we do interviews about stuff that we do rather cleverly by journalists, like, hey, did you learn anything from your character? You know, they feel like they're talking actor to us when they say that. But there is something interesting about that question when you break it down, and I wonder if it applies similarly to you as a writer. When you finished this, do you feel like you learned anything from Tess or any of the other characters that you created that maybe you didn't realize that you needed to learn until you were finished writing?
I'm so thankful to Tess that she's so badass and takes care of everything the way that she does. She did everything she needed to do to take care of everything in the wake of her mother's death and not having her father available to help her. I was so impressed every time another scene came along where she was just this engine pushing things along and all this crazy stuff happening to her. And she just kept going. fueled, I think, by one of the main themes of the book, which is anger. She's got incredible anger. And I was like, is it okay to give this to a young girl? Well, I'm doing it anyway. So to watch her have these temper tantrums and these rages, and like she had to use the anger as an engine to throttle through everything and get to the end. I really appreciated that about her and where she ends up in the end. And also, I'm kind of jealous that she has the experience she does with the goth kids in that house. Quite frankly, I mean, I wish well, some stuff like that does happen to me, but for her, it was this kind of, this real thing, this real experience with this entity that is kind of a doppelganger of her in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody was talking to me about it the other day who said, it's really interesting, it feels like that stuff may not even have really happened. It could have been all in her head. Yet it worked because it was either very paranormal or very real and imagined. I thought, oh, that's interesting.
In that case, it would have been a shared imagined experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But speaking of the supernatural elements of the book, big horror fan?
Yeah.
Man?
Oh, yeah.
So, when you started writing, we know all of the lead up to it, and that you were writing something that you needed to write. Was something supernatural part of that need, or did that become more of a flourish because it's fun and it's something that you love? Where did the ghost come from?
The haunting aspect of the book, I would say, was primarily inspired by a movie called The Changeling, 1980, starring George C. Scott. Takes place in Seattle, and it's about a man who loses his wife and daughter. He's a composer, and he moves across the country, and he moves into this incredible house. And there's an entity in the house that strikes up a desperate need to communicate with him. That has to do with why the entity is stuck there and needs him to become free. This movie moved me irrevocably when I was a child. I was like, oh my God, does that really happen?
I think that speaks a lot to who you were as a child, because I know people that are so terrified of The Changeling that they won't even go back and give it a rewatch.
So scary.
The fact that it reached you and touched you in that way, I think, says a lot about who you are and how you've processed grief and how you process the supernatural, and that certainly comes out in the book as well.
Well, there's a scene in The Changeling that it's the scariest scene I've ever seen in my life. The seance with that lady.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it gives me the goosebumps thinking about it. But I had to watch that, like when I was writing that scene in the book, I had to watch that and get all the oolies and cheese and go back to the computer and sort of with that feeling go through. And I think Lunar at one point even says, Francine is reaching out to you through your loss, which to me is like a direct correlation to, I think, how The Changeling moved me.
Yeah, Lunar kind
Scorsese
of.
says it's the scariest scene he's ever seen, but I am going to say it's
Oh,
great.
it's time for the Q&A.
So at this point, that's a wonderful segue.
I love that. Thank you for keeping us on schedule.
Before we open it up to your questions, I want to sort of put a cap on this by saying you introduced us, or at least me, to the term butt nugget in this book. So my final question, regardless of whether we ran out of time, was going to be, what is a butt nugget? When did a butt nugget come to be to you? And how is it that butt nugget was born?
I mean, butt nugget and crap balls and all the words that they use.
Freaky-ack?
Yeah, freaky-ack is just for me like a more grounded depiction of the way that teenagers speak. Like right now, if you Google something like Gen Z slang, the stuff that comes up, you're just like, what?
Yeah. A lot of it's just words that we thought meant something in the 90s, and now it means other stuff.
Yeah. And so it's sort of an extension of that, but not as pretentious, because sometimes that slang makes it seem like you're really, really trying to be cool. Whereas that's just Tess's way of expressing herself, and also it just feels sort of like at that age you need to have some weird little language of your own. So each one of them has a sort of a weird little thing like that, and also it was a way to play with language.
It felt cool to be a butt nugget, and I think we can all leave today being butt nuggets and feel pretty good about it. Yeah. All right, Q&A. Let's open things up to any of you that want to speak to this brilliant man about the brilliant work that he's done, or anything else.
I have one question.
Hi.
Hi. You said while you were talking about the writing of the book that you broke every rule imaginable. What do you mean by that?
There are rules like Carrie knows. There are rules like don't use exclamation points, and I was like, I'm going to use 4,000 of them. Don't write in all caps. I was like, I have a whole chapter in all caps. You don't need italics. I love them. They're pretty. And also, I would say, pushing the envelope of the middle grade, like lower middle grade, standard middle grade, upper middle grade, lower YA, standard YA, upper YA. When you write for this age group, these books are under the most intense scrutiny. Like, you will have people be like, you cannot have a child say that. You cannot have a child do that. And I'm thinking, why? So, I think that's the realm in which I felt like I was breaking rules. But again, I was doing it because I wasn't trying to stay within the boundaries of anything.
And one more follow-up, which is Tess seemed very deliberately written to me, and yet you said, and I got also the honor of reading it before, and I'm very grateful because I'm not a reader, and I couldn't put the book down. I read it in less than 2 days, and I couldn't put it down. So that's kind of saying a lot for me, but the fact that she surprised you as you're writing her, so it almost seemed like it was, and you said she came out of you surprisingly, and that you had to write this. So I'm fascinated by, it almost sounds like she sort of, as a character, took over your you, and you had to put her down, and I don't know if there's a way to speak more on that, but I find that fascinating. I
would say that that's one of the joys of being a writer when that happens, which is why writers, anyone who's in this room, or actors, or any artists, when that, I don't know if that's a communication you have with the muse or anything else, but when that happens, and you feel sort of like a vessel for stuff to come through. It was really joyous. And it makes sense to me that you would think she came across as very deliberate. She is. Yeah.
And her dad was wonderfully written.
Thank you.
I'll give somebody else.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Someone else like to speak in a free way? Oh, there's a hand.
Hi.
Technical question. From the moment you get an idea or ideas to the moment you send it to the editor or editor,
How long did it take from the idea to sending it to the editor?
I wrote the book while I was in school. That was like 2.5 years of my life. Then Gail helped get it to a publisher who wanted it. I was shocked. I got an email. They're like, "We love your book. I want to publish it." And I was like, "Is this a joke? A joke on me? Seriously?" I was like, "This has got to be a joke." And then subsequently, I used the book deal to nab an agent. And then the agent was like, "I don't want this deal. I would like to try and go out to one of the big 5 and get a deal that I think this book deserves." But that didn't happen, unfortunately, because it's really hard to get a book published. And then the pandemic happened, and that, and then my agent said, "Well, I think we've kind of run the gamut here, so what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want you to go back to the original publisher and get the deal. That's what I want." And he did. So, I would say it took those 2.5 years to write it and rewrite it and then send it out, and then it's just a couple. Wow, it's a long time. It's 2023, isn't it? Takes a long time for books. I wish it didn't.
They're like animated movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's just spot on. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
When you started writing, and then once you finished writing, do you feel like your personal grief had taken a different shape?
Did everyone hear the question? The question was, by the time he was finished writing, had his personal grief taken a different shape?
I tell you, it was really interesting. Grief and I have a little bit of a relationship. Grief keeps coming back and knocking me on my ass in my life. You know, it's like there used to be 8 people in my family. There are 3 of us now. So the interesting thing is, I'm a total goofball. I always have been, and at my goofiest, grief comes in and it's like, BAM! It just knocks me back. And a part of this book was basically the goofiness was fighting back against that. And when I was finished, I was like, I did it. I let the goofiness up against this grief and anger win. You know, they got into the ring together. So it's almost like all the, you know, the characters in this book that are total goofballs are like the grief wearing a clown mask. Up there, like, yeah. So I would say that I felt good that I beat it with not sadness and heaviness, and I'm such a victim, because this is life. This happens to every one of us. Thank you very much. But it's like able to use my creativity and my stupid ass goofiness to like battle the grief and hopefully send a really strong lesson out to the world and to kids who read it, and I hope really get it and really like it.
You want to sign some books?
Oh, we have time for one more question?
More questions?
Yeah, one more question.
I have a question, but I don't want Robert Smith to be waiting.
No, it's okay. Robertson's okay.
So,
Okay.
Tim, you're an amazing writing teacher. This is not a paid plug. If you've not taken Tim's writing workshop or had him as your teacher, then you're missing out. If you want to write, you should study with him. And being in your workshops while you're writing, while you're editing, while you're working on your books is like amazing. But I just want to ask you for those of us here, because I think I see some people who have been through your process with you, your generous teaching process. But what lessons that you give to people who work with you, like what lessons got you through your process, or what lessons maybe came out of your process that you might like highlight?
Fadai.
Oh.
Fadai is this expression called FDIE, which stands for First Draft is Everything. And the woman who said that to me, Carrie Madden is here. She's one of my mentors, and I adore her. Carrie said to me in my first semester, because I kept asking her, should I go back and fix it? Should I go back and fix it? And Carrie said, write the first draft. Soldier through to the end. You have no book if you don't finish it. Finish the book. Then go back and figure everything out. So you have to finish the book first. And it's a really hard thing to do. Really hard. There are so many things, especially in today's day and age, that distract you. When I write now, I have to phone in the bathroom with the door closed on the other side of the house. And even still, I'm like writing, and then I'm like, I feel the phone calling to me. It's pulling me, I gotta check my Instagram. It's so insane. So that's a very big one. First draft is everything. The other one is the famous quote by Toni Morrison of like, if there's a book in the world you need to read and it's not in existence, you need to write it. Yeah, I love that one. Like, you gotta write what you gotta write. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
joining us and celebrating a triumph of a novel.
Oh my God, I'm so tired.
I think at this point Tim's going to sign some books and splash some smiles.
Thank you, everyone.